Hey guys and girls, welcome to another edition of Bolts Breakdown. Jay Recher here with you. We are live at the iHeartRadio Empire here on 4002 West Gandy. There you go, Bolts Breakdown, in case you didn't believe me. Bryan Burns will be joining us. He's in the Big Apple. He's traveling with the team this week, so he'll be in New York today and then in Beantown tomorrow for the Lightning's game against the Boston Bruins. So we'll talk about those matchups. Rangers today. We'll look back at the last game against the LA Kings. And then, of course, we'll analyze some of the moves that is together. So let's try to bring Burnsy in here. Make sure this camera's straight. Where are you? Adding. You always love that thing when it's adding. We know Bryan Burns is on his way. Come on, baby. Gotta love the advancement of modern technology where we could be halfway across the world like I was in Manchester about 2 weeks ago, and we were still able to do it. Try to do it. I was getting my he declined the live video invitation. You don't decline me. Come on now, man. Add. Come on now, Facebook. Do it for me. Adding Bryan Burns, connecting to Bryan Burns, and there he is, live from his lavish and posh hotel room there in the Big Apple. Bryan Burns, what's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am good, my friend. Where are you guys staying?
We were
Not the exact hotel, but what city?
what city? We're in New York City. We're in Manhattan. We're up by Central Park, Columbus Circle area.
Nice. Very nice, very nice. All right, Burnsy, before we get into tonight's matchup, and even before we look back at the last game against the LA Kings, I know we talked about it the other day with Greg Linnelli when we were doing the pregame on WFLA as well as Lightning Power Play. But big moves at the trade deadline. Which of the moves that were made really stood out to you?
Yeah, the one that just kind of perplexed me a little bit was Keith Kincaid going to Columbus. I was just surprised that the Devils would give up on him for, I think it was a 5th round pick. So, not much coming back in return to the Devils for a guy who started the first round playoff series against the Lightning last year and looked really good last season. I know he's had some struggles this year, but just surprised that they were, kind of giving up on him. And I guess Columbus too, the number of moves that they made, I thought that they might be, sellers at the deadline, might be trying to ship off Bobrovsky and Panarin to get some kind of return for those guys, because it doesn't look like they'll be back with Columbus after this season. But surprised just to see them kind of push all their chips into the middle of the table and go all in. So it looks like they might be a threat, particularly for the Lightning. I know the Lightning have had success against them this year, but it'll be it's a potential team that they could see in the postseason. Could be a first-round opponent, and it'll be a different-looking team if the Lightning do face them.
Burnsy, obviously the big storyline here locally was that the Tampa Bay Lightning stood pat, didn't really add anything, didn't add anything at all. I mean, not a depth defenseman, not a big home run swing for a guy like Panarin, and not a kind of middle-of-the-road pickup for a guy like Wayne Simmons. Surprised or not surprised that they didn't at least make a small deal?
Yeah, not really surprised. I thought maybe coming out of the bye week when they were struggling to score goals a little bit. I think they had like 8 goals in 5 games. Those first five games coming out of the bye week. I thought maybe you might see them pick up a depth forward, or just maybe go after a Simmons or a Furland, or even Panarin was bandied about as a possible if the Lightning wanted to just go completely all in. Try to make a run at him. But, once they kind of found their way again, once their game picked back up, they've been putting up, 5-6 goals a night here with regularity. Defensively, they're playing as well as they have all year. The goaltending's there. Power play, number 1 in the league. Penalty kill, now number 1 in the league, too, after going 4 for 4 against the Kings the other night. Now they're number 1 for that. So, everything's just going really well for this team right now. And I think it's a case of you just don't want to, if it's not broken, don't fix it. There's no reason to really go out and get anybody just to add someone. If you do add someone, then you've got to integrate them into your lineup. You got to figure out playing time. You got to figure out who's going to sit on the bench more, who's going to lose playing time, whose spot are they going to take. Lightning already have good players sitting on the bench right now, with at forward, at defense, because of the depth that they have. So I think just adding a body just to add someone just wasn't really in the cards for this team. And John Cooper talked about that a little bit at morning skate today, how The move that they made last year with Miller and McDonough was a move that was really done, with the future in mind. And those two have really paid dividends this season in particular, even more so maybe than last year's playoff run. So he said if there was a move to be made, it would have been done kind of with the future in mind, but that move just wasn't available. There wasn't, the right player that would be the right fit for their system and what they needed, and would cost the cost wouldn't be too high for the Lightning. So they just decided to stand pat, and this is the team we're going to go with in the playoffs, and things have gone well so far. So let's just hope that this squad can finish the job.
That guy, Bryan Burns, beat writer for TampaBayLightning.com. This guy, Jay Recher, 95.3 WDAE. Follow Bryan on Twitter at BBurnsNHL, especially with him traveling with the team. So any quick news, you're going to get it right away from Burnsy. Follow me on Twitter at Jay Recher. As always, we want to hear from you on Bolts Breakdown. Let us know where you're watching it from. Put it there at the bottom of the screen. Share this on your Facebook as well, and give us some likes and loves. I want to see all the, thumbs up and the hearts on the screen. We always love that. We always want to hear from you. So a lot of people on here, Burnsy, talking about possible matchups down the road. I know it's still early. Shout out to Paul Hillbrandt in Jacksonville for watching. We always appreciate you. Right now, Burnsy, putting you on the spot. The Stanley Cup final matchup will be
Tampa Bay, San Jose.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, man. I love the deal that San Jose made, bringing Gustav Nyquist on there. I know they're a little worried, I'm sure, because Erik Karlsson left the game last night due to injury. But if anybody can kind of make up for that, it's the team that's got Brent Burns and Marc-Edouard Vlasic back there as well. But I love the firepower with Pavelski, and I think Thornton's going to try to, go. Who knows? This possibly be his last season. So Pavelski, Hertl, Donskoy, Evander Kane, who was not afraid to throw down, was Zdeno Chara out of all people last night. I like that. They got a little sandpaper to their game. They got high-end scoring. They got good defense. If Martin Jones can play like he did about 2-3 years ago, I think they'll be in good shape. So I'm with you, man. I think Lightning and San Jose, if you guys have any idea or any predictions on what the Stanley Cup final matchup is, feel free to put it there at the bottom of your screen. Shout out to Jose Hernandez watching from Orlando, Florida. Let's look back at the game the other night, Burnsy, against the LA Kings. The Lightning go up 2-0 in the first. We talked about that. That was one of your keys to make sure you start fast. We talked about how the Kings were 9-0 after leading after one. But you know what? The Kings showed that wherewithal. They showed that championship grit, some of the guys that they have with them. They were able to fight back and eventually take the lead. Great job by the Lightning and Steven Stamkos to set up Miller to tie it up, and then just their all-world talent finally took over in the shootout when you're getting goals from Cooch, Stammer, and Hedman, and then Vazzy making the big save against Dustin Brown to win the game. But when you look at a game like that, Burnsy, they're not all going to be Picassos. I think one of the most impressive things about the Lightning this year, and I'm sure you would agree, is that they're winning in so many different ways. Sometimes they win, bell to bell. Sometimes they go down and then they come back. Sometimes they have a big lead and then they blow it, like we've seen against Philadelphia. Sometimes it's a smaller lead and they blow it and then they come back and win. A lot of times in hockey, it seems like when teams blow a lead, it's hard for them to come back. They don't have that resolve. They don't have that resiliency. But this Lightning team, man, it's tough to poke a hole, because even when they don't have their best game like they did the other night, they still find a way to come away with 2 points.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are probably going to look at that matchup and think, oh, the Lightning should have blown them out. The Kings were the next to last team in the NHL standings. The Lightning obviously are well above everybody else in the NHL standings. But I think what you're seeing right now is the Lightning are just getting everybody's best shot. And you listen to the comments from coaches and players after the game, after that Kings game. Again, just like the game before, and that game is escaping me right now. Buffalo. Yeah, same thing with Buffalo. They loved their game. The coaches and players, both the Sabres and the Kings, they loved how they played in that game. They thought they, did the things that they needed to do to perhaps come out with a win. Had played, better than they had in some time, and a lot of, especially for the Sabres, who were coming in on a little bit of a losing skid. But the Lightning are still finding a way to beat these teams. They're getting the other team's best shot. They're playing as well as they played all year, but the Lightning, just like you said, they just find a way. And I thought the response goal after the Kings went up 3-2 in the third period, I mean, it's pretty bang. It's 2-1, then all of a sudden, wow, it's tied. And then next thing you know, another one's in the back of the net. Now the Lightning are down 3-2. I thought the Lightning's response, that next couple shifts, They played really well and able to get that game tying goal right back. And I thought that was pretty key, obviously, to get the tying goal pretty much right away, and just kind of send a message to LA that they weren't going to just let them come from behind and win that game. That it was going to be a challenge for them. So didn't really I thought the Lightning played a pretty good first period. Yeah, we talked about that during the last breakdown that start was going to be key. I thought they played really well in the first. Maybe they took their foot off the gas a little bit. I don't know. I think LA kind of got into the game a little bit more, and they didn't really give the Lightning much zone time, much offensive zone time. In the second period, then the third period, I thought LA just kind of came out and outplayed the Lightning, I feel like, for much of that period. But good for the Lightning to still have that resolve to find a way to win, to get it to the shootout, and to come away with another victory. They're 9th in a row and 100 points on the season now.
Burns, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment or try to be too hyperbolic about this whole thing, but just kind of like watching and looking up some of the some of the stats for this team, and watching after the games last night on NBC Sports Network, and hearing guys like Anson Carter and Jeremy Roenick, who've been covering this game for a long time after their playing days. And they're just talking about how good the Tampa Bay Lightning are, and that the only team that can really beat them is themselves. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We're going to have a lot more Bolts breakdown before the end of the season, I hope. But sometimes I think here locally, and even some of the fans that complain about the LA and the Buffalo wins, but they in some way are looking and poking holes and trying to find the negative. Should Tampa Bay fans kind of just sit back a little bit and enjoy this team? Because if they do end up going to win the Stanley Cup, we could look back at this as one of the best, not only Lightning teams, if not the best Lightning team of all time. This could be one of the best Tampa Bay sports teams of all time. I know John Romano and Martin Finley for the Tampa Bay Times gave their 2 cents on that. But independent of what they've written, watching that game and just listening to hear visiting media talk about this Lightning team, I feel like at times we're kind of just making light of it and thinking, oh, well, they've lost the last couple of years and they got to win in the playoffs. And I understand that they do have to go out there and win, but I think we might be in the middle of some greatness that some people don't just sit back and enjoy. Do you see that same thing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is kind of the golden era of Lightning hockey. You look at some of the players that are on the team. You've got I was talking about this with Gabe Marte the other day. Like, you've got 4 guys, probably maybe even 5 guys, whose numbers might be in the rafters when their career's all said and done. Stamkos, Hedman, Vazzy's obviously on his way, Kucherov's on his way, and I think Braden Point has a pretty good chance as long as he keeps continuing to trend up. I mean, you have 5 of the best players that your franchise has ever seen playing right now. You've gone to the Stanley Cup final a few years ago. You've gone to 3 of the last 4 Eastern Conference finals, and then obviously this incredible season that they're having right now. If you're a Lightning fan, you really do just kind of need to sit back and just enjoy what you're watching right now, because it's kind of unprecedented what they're doing right now in the NHL. And Dan Rosen from NHL.com asked John Cooper today about I think they're on 130 points. They're projected, the Lightning are, to finish with this season. And that puts them up there with like the 1977 Canadiens, the 78 Canadiens, the Bruins from back in that era as well. I'm not sure which team. But he asked John Cooper about that. Like, what's it like to be, mentioned with those teams, or even be in the same breath? And John Cooper even said, sometimes you just have to like kind of, we don't think about it when you're caught up because we're just trying to win hockey games and we just want to go out and play well. But, sometimes you just have to take a step back and look at that and think that's pretty cool that we're in the same breath as those, historic teams. So, I think as Lightning fans, we kind of need to do the same thing. Just kind of sit back and enjoy this team and really appreciate the skill and the depth and everything that they've been able to do this season, because it's been a pretty magical run this year. And hopefully, it'll end with the ultimate goal of hoisting that Stanley Cup.
Without a doubt. And, we're imploring all of you Lightning fans out there to be positive, support this team. Don't, kind of overdo the negatives. There was a picture I put up on Twitter last night. Greg Linnelli and Eric Erlandson and I were kind of bandying about on Twitter, talking about it. It was a picture from 2014-15 in an airplane with a bunch of guys. It was the New York Rangers team. It had Marty St. Louis, but there were 6 guys in that were Lightning and Ranger guys. You had Marty St. Louis and Dominic Moore and Ryan McDonough, JT Miller, Dan Girardi, It was just a really Dan Boyle, I think, if I didn't mention him, but it was just really cool to see, especially me, moving from there to here, just like the whole dynamic. But the caption in the photo was, "You don't really know when the good old days are until they're gone."
Yeah.
So right now, enjoy this. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty with the Rays and their stadium, and who knows with the Buccaneers. They seem to be just forever letting people down in the city of Tampa, which I know this is a football ravaged city and a football ravaged state, but this is a hockey town now too. So these days aren't going to last forever. Eventually contracts are going to come up and you're not going to be able to keep these same core guys. So as Lightning fans out there, man, enjoy this. Like Burnsy said, this is a golden age for hockey, and especially down here in Tampa Bay with the Lightning. That's Bryan Burns, beat writer for TampaBayLightning.com, Recher 95.3 WDAE. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to put them there at the bottom of the screen. Also, share this on your Facebook. Put shared and let us know where you're watching from. We'll do our best to shout you out. Give us some likes, loves, and some thumbs up. Burnsy, let's look forward to tonight's game against the New York Rangers. And this is a team that is going to look very, very different from the last time the Lightning have played them. But I want to get your three keys because I think this is a very interesting game tonight. If you just look at it on paper, you're looking at one team with, arguably could be one of the best teams of all time when all's said and done, against a team that's going to have a lot of new and a lot of fresh young faces in there. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a 10-0 game. This is going to be an interesting matchup on national TV as well. What are your three keys to victory for the Bolts tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lightning have to expect to get a team's best shot again tonight. They're all these teams, they see the Lightning as the clear number one team in the NHL, and they want to measure their game against theirs. They want to see if they can knock off the top dog, and they might go into it with a little bit more focus and a little bit more purpose. So it's something the Lightning definitely have to guard against down the stretch. But my number one key is just to finish strong. And if there is like a hole or two you can poke in the Lightning's game of late, it's that they gave up the late lead to the Kings the other night. Last time they came to the Madison Square Garden, they had a 3-0 lead and watched it evaporate. Got down to 3-2, and they kind of had to hold on towards the end of that one. So number one for me is just kind of finish strong. If you get a lead, hold on to it, play well defensively, do the little things defensively that you need to do to protect that lead, let your goalie see everything coming his way, and just be a little bit more committed to seeing the victory all the way through. Number two for me is eliminate turnovers, and I thought that was a little bit of an issue in the Kings game. This team hasn't turned the puck over that much. I know that's years past, teams past, Lightning teams for the last couple of years. That's kind of been one issue that a lot of those teams have had. They've been like very prolific offensively, but they tend to turn the puck over a little bit. This team hasn't done that all that much, and really since the beginning of 2019 or even coming out of the break, I think they've really been committed to playing well defensively and not eliminating all of those turnovers in their own end, the turnovers that lead to golden opportunities for other teams. But I thought in the Kings game, it started to go back the other way. They did turn the puck over a little bit in their own end, more than we've seen in games past. So for me, it's just kind of, correct that before it becomes an issue again. It hasn't been an issue of late, but you don't want it to be an issue over these last 19 games or so going into the playoffs. You want to, be committed to eliminating those turnovers and just making smart passes. And then number three for me is, they have a chance. It kind of gets buried with all the historical records that the Lightning have set this year, but they're on a 9-game win streak, which has tied a franchise record, and they have a chance to set a franchise record with another victory night tonight, which would be their 10th straight win. So for me, use that as motivation. Go for that record. I know that they've set a lot of records this year, but that's another one that's on the board for them that they can go for, and just use that as the motivation so you're focused and you're committed to playing the right way, and you can come out with another victory tonight.
If I'm the Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm keeping my head on a swivel tonight. You got a lot of young guys for the New York Rangers that are going to be out there trying to prove that they deserve a roster spot, not just for the rest of this season, but next year as well. My one to watch is a guy that's going to be making his debut for the Rangers tonight, Brendan Lemieux. And if that name sounds familiar, no, not Mario, Claude Lemieux. You remember him, a pain in the butt for many, many years in the late 80s, I believe. No, definitely in the 90s and the 2000s. But you remember Claude Lemieux won a couple. I think he won 2 with the Devils. I know he's got 1 with Montreal, 1 with Colorado. Big-time playoff performer. He won the Conn Smythe one year, and he was always known for that grit and always kind of getting under the skin kind of the Marchand of the 90s, if you will. Big hits, and his son plays the same kind of way. Wasn't really getting opportunities in Winnipeg. He's going to get a chance to play for this Rangers team. David Quinn, the coach, says he loves his game. He's going to be an agitating guy. He says it's a lot easier for me to make people mad than to make people like me. So don't be surprised that this is a very physical game, because you have one team that's been playing at an elite level pretty much the entire season against another team that, in my opinion, the Rangers, the 2 times they played the Lightning, have hung in there pretty well. I mean, they went down in the game here in Tampa Bay, but they fought back and were right in that game. The Lightning's talent just eventually took over. And then you mentioned the other game where they went down. Yanni Gourde, I remember, had a nice goal in that game, and there was a play in front of the net where the Rangers had an opportune chance, but Louis Domingue came up with a big save against Chris Kreider on the side of the net. Kreider and Zibanejad, the 2 guys holding over after everybody cleaning house, getting rid of Hayes, Zuccarello, McQuaid, and the bunch. So even though these 2 teams, talent-wise and on paper, big disparity, keep an eye out tonight. There's a lot of familiar faces on both sides, and I think there's going to be a lot of Rangers out there with something to prove. So keep an eye on Brendan Lemieux tonight. Lightning players, head up. Don't need any more injuries. Don't need anything crazy going on. All right, that's Bryan Burns, beat writer for TampaBayLightning.com. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at BBurnsNHL. Follow the team at TB Lightning. Go to TampaBayLightning.com for the best news and notes. Burnsy, what's on the page today, brother?
Win streak, going for the record.
Awesome stuff. Burnsy, thanks, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you, buddy. Good stuff there from Bryan Burns. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Recher. You can follow the station at 95.3 WDAE. Go to 95.3WDAE.com for the best Bolts coverage. Tonight, the game, as always, will be up the dial on our sister station, News Radio, WFLA. And tonight's game, 3 out of 4 on the NBC Sports Network. So make sure you go check that one out. And everybody will be watching the Bolts tonight, including you. I'm Jay. That was Bryan. We'll be back tomorrow to look back at the Ranger game and to preview the Bruins game that'll be tomorrow night from Beantown. We'll see you next time right here on Bolts Breakdown.